Okay, I hope you can see this. I hope you can hear me all okay. So hello and welcome. I think I'm going to get started. It's 5:05 and you're on schedule now, given we have 30 minutes to get through the demonstration. So hello and welcome to this API Management 101 session from zero to managed with Tyk in 30 minutes. In today's session, we are going to be going over some of the basic concepts of API management, 5 of those. And we'll be seeing I'll be demonstrating to you how you can accomplish all of those things with Tyk within 30 minutes, hopefully. So for the uninitiated, Tyk is an open source API gateway and service management platform, complete with a beautifully designed dashboard as well as a customizable developer portal, all once again powered by a lightweight, low latency, robust API gateway, open source API gateway. I am Buddha. Hello and welcome. I'm a product evangelist at Tyk. My role really is to showcase the power, the skills, the capabilities, and the possibilities of Tyk and what it can do for your project, for your business, and enable you to be successful, really. That's really the objective of us as a company, of me specifically, and hopefully you'll get to learn something today and take things back which you can try out. Moving right along, so these would be the 5 different things that we're going to be looking at. It's a bit of a journey that we're going to be taking, starting off with adding an API endpoint to the Tyk gateway. It's essentially from an existing upstream API that is available, and I'll talk about what API we're going to be using. Then we'll be securing said API with an authentication token, where we'll be introducing policies and keys, the concept of that. Then we'll be looking at limiting the rate limiting of your APIs, both at a global as well as a per API basis, and why that would be useful for you. Then as we progress, we're going to be looking at versioning your API and how that works. How that works. And after that, we'll be looking at cataloging the API endpoint, which is essentially exposing your API for external usage, combined with a bit of documentation that will show how that works. So it's sort of like just going through the whole life cycle of adding, securing, rate limiting, versioning, and then making it available. So 5 different steps that we're going to be going through. Right. With that, before we begin, there are a couple of things that I do want to highlight. One is that I am going to be using the Tyk Cloud account, which is our SaaS product. Very easy, quick to get started with that. You can also follow along if you do have a local installation of Tyk, whether that is on your own device or on your own data center or a self-managed cloud of your own. You can still do it as long as you've got it all started. Once you log into the dashboard, you'll be able to follow along the same steps, regardless of which platform that you are on. Additionally, in case you are looking to get started and you have not, then we do have a get started page where you just fill it up and you can get started really easily with Tyk Cloud. If you're looking to start with an on-premise sort of setup or a local setup, you might need a license key, a trial license. And in order to get that, once you sign up, we'll have a notification and we'll follow up with you with that license key. Or you can reach out directly to me. I'm reasonably friendly. Buddha@tyk.io is my email ID. Reach out to me and I'll sort that all out for you. So that's sort of the bit of a beginning, bit of starting. The API that we're going to be using today is something called the Pet Store Swagger API. That's the URL. I'll show you in a little bit how that actually looks, but that's kind of the API, the upstream API that we're going to be using for demonstrating today. Followed by Postman, which we're going to be using for testing out our call, sending in our request and getting our responses. That's the platform that we're going to be using in order to do that. So that all being said, that sort of sets the scene a little bit. And now, with time being about 5:10 at this point of time, we're going to get started with our 30 minutes. So here we go. I am going to stop. I'm going to try and get out of this. And I'm going to go straight here. So this is the Tyk dashboard where I've already created an account. So we're going to get started with our very first step, which is going to be adding an API endpoint to our Tyk gateway. This is basically how it looks. And if you want to get a quick sneak peek into what API we're going to be using, this is a Swagger pet store. You have a range of different APIs that you can make use of. The one that we're going to be using is called the get pet by ID. And we'll touch upon that really, really shortly. So let me begin with logging in. Once you do, this is the first landing page that you would see, which is essentially our dashboard, our activity dashboard. It tells a little bit of a story around the activity that's been happening, your successful, it's analytics basically, your successful requests, your errors or latencies or any of those issues. To a certain degree, you'll be able to see those right here. And obviously, I've been testing around a little bit in preparation for this, so you do see some of this. Don't be worried if you don't see much when you first come in. That is by design. I think it's you've not really created an API, so there haven't been any calls. Where we do want to get started with is right here on the left panel under System Management. We have APIs, and let's click that. So you'll see a list of APIs right here. These are some things that I've been working on, and that's why it's over here. We're going to create a brand new one. And when we click on Add New API, we are going to call it the Pet Store Demo. It's going to be a REST-based API. And if you're looking to get the URL, the base URL, you can get it from here. I'm hoping that is all visible. And add that to your target URL. Once you do that, you would now be asked to configure, oh, sorry, I need to add in the protocol. That should work. So here we go. It has created a base level here. There are a couple of configurations that you can set. Right now, the one that I am interested in is this authentication mode. So there are different authentication modes. We're going to be touching upon the authentication token really shortly. But just to get us started, we're going to be going into an open authentication mode, which is keyless. And with that, when I press save, we have our first API mounted on our Tyk gateway. So let's see if we can test that out. I'm going to copy this, and I have my, this is the Postman interface that is now available. To me, this is the API call. So right now, this is just the base path. So this isn't really going to accomplish much, really. If I send in a request, it's not going to do much because that's not really the endpoint that we are after. The endpoint that we are after is this one. Like I said, we're going to be using /pet by ID. So let's go back, and I'm going to add a pet. I'm going to add in pet number 1. When I send, okay, let me just do this. Just give me one more minute to update that. Hopefully that is going to work. Okay, let's try that again. Right, that says pet not found. Let me just test out on Swagger if it is giving an error at this point. Oh yeah, it does. Okay, so that seems to be a bit of an issue with Swagger Pet Store itself, which is weird. Let's see. Okay, so 2 seems to work. So let me try 2 instead. And there you go. So our first response, that took longer than it was required. Thank you, Swagger Pet Store. Yeah, there you go. You've got your first response back, which is essentially a dog by the creative name Doggy. So we've got our first dog coming in, and that's essentially our very first step. Now that we've got this created, what we want to do is, that may not seem like it's a lot going on because you're just sending in a request. What's really happening under the hood is that request is now being driven or directed by the Tyk API gateway. And we're going to be seeing the power of actually what that brings to the table really shortly. starting with authentication, because right now it is open to everybody. So anyone and everyone can essentially make a call to this and access the information that's associated with that endpoint. What we do want to do in most cases is that we want to have some level of security or authentication attached to this, so that only people that we want to have access to this API endpoint will have access to this. So I'm going to switch over to authentication token, and I'm just going to remember that authorization key header, update. Now, when it comes to authentication, there are two ways of doing this. So with an authentication token, you need to create a key that is essentially a mode of authentication in this case. One of the means to generate that key is on a per API basis, which if I switch over to keys and click add key, you'll see there are two ways of doing it. One is to choose on a per API basis, and the other one is to do it based on policy. So per API obviously works when you've got a limited number of APIs available, and you've got single digit APIs, and you can create the keys for each individual API and manage it that way. But in most cases, you may have more than that. If it's double digits, triple digits, maybe in thousands, then ideally you wouldn't want to be creating keys for each individual APIs. So to remedy that, or to rescue you from that situation, we have the concept of policies. What policies do is essentially create this global level of rules, security rules that can be applied across multiple API endpoints. This rule is not limited to just security. You would have other things that you can also accomplish, which we're going to again touch upon really shortly. So I'm going to quickly go on to policies. And with policies, there are two steps to authenticate using policies. One is to create the policy itself, which I'm going to do now. It asks me to actually pick the different APIs that I want associated with this policy right up front. Again, this is a step that you can add or remove APIs from the policy at any given stage if you want. Right now, I'm just going to use this. And as soon as that has happened, you can see that on a global level, that policy is now included the pet store demo API endpoint that I had created. There are a couple of things that you can do beyond just the security aspect, which is rate limiting, just a sneak peek onto our step 3. But let's just go ahead and create the policy. Under configuration, I want to create the name of this, which is pet store policy. The other thing you need to set here is going to be the expiry time on this. So this can be, depending on what you really want to accomplish here, you can have a set time after which it's going to expire, or for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm just going to keep it timeless. And I'm going to create this policy. So policy has now been set up. I'm going to go back to my keys and try and create that key with policy. So now I see my pet store policy is readily available. As soon as I click on this, you'll see that what's happening here is it's inheriting all of the different rules that have been set at that policy level for me right here. So it's already set the global limits and quotas based on what the policy is already talking about. Once I do that, I am going to go into configs again. Do I need to change anything? No, it has already inherited my does not expire from my policy. And I'm going to create this key. There you go. That's a key that has been now created. I'm going to quickly copy this and demonstrate this. I'm going to go back here. So what should happen is if I send a request now, it is going to stop me because there is no authorization here. But so that I do have access to an authentication token. So I am going to add that in, and we are now going to get back our doggy. So it's good to see the doggy again. It is now available to us. Once again, it is now authenticated and available only to people who have said authentication token available. So that's step 2 that we have now successfully accomplished. Now, on with the journey. Next step to this is, now let's assume you are in a situation where you only want people to have access to your API or make calls or requests to your API endpoints for a limited period of time, or a limited number of requests over a period of time. It's quite a common monetization strategy as well. It is also one of the potential strategies for load management as well. There's obviously other things that you can do, like caching your responses, but this could be one of those as well. So because if you remember, our policy is the one that is controlling all of our rules of engagement in this case on a global level, we're going to try and go back to policies, look into pet store policy. And right here where it says global limits and quotas is where you would see you've got rate limiting available. Now, by default, it's set to about 1,000 for every 60 seconds, which is decent to begin with. But I think for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm going to reduce that down to about 3 to be tested in about 20 seconds. So what it should happen is, while I update this, what should happen at this point of time is that when I actually try to request the API endpoint for more than 3 times within a period of 20 seconds, it should not allow me to do that. So let's test that out. That's 1, that's 2, that's 3, and we've been hit by a block. So our rate limit has now been exceeded and we can no longer make that request, at least for 20 seconds. And then once that 20-second time is done, the limit obviously resets. So that is a very basic level of rate limiting. Now, the other thing is, from a policy perspective, like I said, it is something that takes care of things on a global level. But if you want this to have something specific, want to set specific rules at the level of the API itself, you can still do that. So for instance, if you have 100 policies, 100 APIs under a single policy, and say 99 of those APIs all adhere to the same rules of engagement, you would have, and you have one specific API that you want to have, it's special in some way and you want to have special rules. The way you would go about it from a rate limiting perspective here is to just go down and click on set API limit. So what it's going to do is essentially it's going to override the group policy that we have already set in. And therefore, it sort of asks for a little bit of a confirmation if whether you are sure you want to do that or not. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set this to 5 in 20 seconds as opposed to 3. And now, because this is going to override what the policy has set in, I should be able to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there you go. So that's what you can do from a global policy basis as well as from a per API basis. You have both those options available. Right now, obviously, I've got a single API, so it may seem okay, redundant a little bit, but imagine having about 100 odd APIs and most of them adhere to a specific group. But if there are exceptions to that, you can still have it, have the policy set for most of the other things, while a single thing like rate limiting could be handled on a per API basis as well. So you have that option for you if that is something that you are looking at. Now, that is step 3 now completed. We are doing pretty decently with our time. We are about, I think, about 11, 12 minutes in. On to the next one, which is step number 4, where we are going to be looking at versioning. So you've been building out your API. You're now looking at creating a second version with a few different features, with a few different things available, enabled. How would you go about doing that? That's where versioning cuts up, helps you out. So we go back into APIs again. And we are going to go back and open up Pet Store demo. So right on top, you would see versions. So that's usually self-explanatory. You click on that, and right now we don't have any versions available because we don't have a second version. So I'm going to enable that. And right now, as you see, there is one version. It's called default. And I am going to create a second version. Now you do have a few different options here. If you want to override the target host and it's essentially your version 2 is hosted in a completely different place, you can enable that as well. But for our purposes, we're not going to do that. You can have expiration time here as well if you want. Say it's sort of like expiring the time for when your older version perhaps is going to be available to people. So it's a means of essentially accomplishing that. So I'm going to create this. Now we do have two versions. Obviously, right now it's all going through the same thing, so there's not much of a difference. In order to showcase or highlight this, what I'm going to do is to actually create a bit of a bonus content for you, which is showcasing a very special plugin. For that, I'm going to go to our endpoint designer, which is right next to our versions on top. And here, I'm going to select my version 2. With that, I'm going to add an endpoint specifically for my version 2. This is, again, for the purpose of demonstration. And I'm going to choose a path. And this path is going to be, say, for a special pet, which is going to be pet number 2, which is what we have been working for. And I'm going to make use of this plugin called mock response. And so the mock response plugin is really used primarily from a developmental perspective to test out responses, pseudo responses, whether the API gateway is working, whether requests are coming through, is it getting the right response? It's something that you can almost, it's a mock essentially, like the name suggests. And I'll show you how that really works. So in this case, because we don't have a really real version 2, I'm going to just use this mock response to accomplish that. Going in, I am going to set in. So this is your response body. It's going to be a JSON response body that I'm creating. I'm going to say name Mafalda. That may sound like an interesting name. That is actually the name of a very close friend of mine, her pet, her cat, not hers. So it's her cat, really, really cute one. I'm going to set my type to be cat. And just for good measure, I'm even going to put in version 2. And that's about it. I don't need the headers at this point of time, so I am just going to try and update this. And so what it's going to do is really, when we hit the version 2 of this API endpoint, is going to direct the call to this particular mock response. And we should be able to see this version of the response, as opposed to what we have been seeing so far, which is now associated with the default version. So let's go back to our Postman. And right now, if I don't think I will get anything because the version information is missing. And so what needs to happen here is I'm going to be adding in this header. And let's get our regular information back, which was this. So this is what we had. This is our default version. And now if I were to switch this on to version 2, I have my folder. My dear cat is now available here. Now, obviously it looks a little bit different because it's coming back as a text version. I can switch that on to JSON, and that is also available. The other way you can do that is to just have a content type defined here and call it application/JSON. I think I've got that spelling right. If I add that and update it, what should happen again is the next time I make a response, it should automatically just be in the JSON format. So, okay, I'm going to just test it if that really works. And there you go. It is automatically now on to JSON. The other thing to highlight here is that if I were to not mention or specify a version here, it will automatically take the default version. So if you see, okay, fine. Let's go default. I think it's not set. Okay. If I go back here, I don't have a version that is being set. So I choose my version 2 and update this. Okay, I'm hoping that has successfully updated now. And if I were to remove this, okay, it may not have propagated yet. Okay, I'm going to just give it a couple of minutes before that propagates. But what is supposed to happen is you can choose a default version in this case, and in case the X API version is not explicitly specified, it will default to that version. So yeah, so that's sort of what that's supposed to do. I'm going to give it one last try, and there you go. So you've got that information now available, and you can switch between different versions, what the default is going to be. Okay, that is step 4 now completed. We are just coming up on about 20 minutes. So we've got about 10 minutes left for our final step, which is going to be the last part of this journey, which is going to be, now that we have created these our API endpoint, secured it, rate limited it, and versioned it. We want to now make it available for people to use, for our API consumers. And the way to do that is going to be through our developer portal. So our dev portal is essentially a customizable, very lightweight content management system. I'm going to show you what that really looks like at this point. And the option to go here is right there. So that's our portal. This is something that comes out of the box. And where we are looking at is this API catalog. So right now I've got a demo which is available. So let's add our pet store to this. So I'm going to go in here under portal management on the left-hand side. We have catalog, which if I click, you'll see the demo that's already available. And I'm going to add a new one. So I'm just going to say pet store demo. I need to associate this with our policy because there isn't a required authentication in this case. And I'm going to give it a bit of a detail. This is a demo pet store API. Okay. And I think I'm just going to leave that. We'll get to documentation in a little bit, but basically exposing or cataloging an API has two steps. One is making it available like we are doing right now, listed essentially on the API catalog. And the second part is documentation. So this is step one of cataloging our information. So once I save this, if I go back here, I'll see that now I've this listed here with the option of requesting an API key. So I click on this, it will ask me a few questions, which is give me, so this is really, the use case here is really if you have a specific API use case in mind, and you want to create an application perhaps, then you're requesting a key to access said API that is being exposed or cataloged here. So I'm going to say this is an app called CatManDo. And the use case here is that I want to view all cats in the pet store. So once I have that, I'm going to click on request key, and it's going to generate the key automatically. So there are two ways here to do this. This is an automatically generated key from the developer portal. If you want to have an approval process to be part of this, then that is also possible for you to enable. So right now, I just made it easy, simple. And if you use this key, it is going to be, should be usable. If I were to just change this key, and send this information, I would still get the response. So that's all good. We have now cataloged our API, at least listed it in our catalog section. The second step is going to be documentation. Obviously, some may think it is optional, but it is really useful to have documentation. And given the name of what we are using, which is Swagger, I think interactive documentation is really what we are going after. So we've got about 7 more minutes, so hopefully that shouldn't take too long. The documentation step in itself may feel like it's a little bit complicated, but really if you follow along, it's really not that hard. There are 4 key things that we're going to be looking at. So let's begin with actually looking at what the documentation looks like. So in order to achieve this, you click here. That's essentially the URL right on top. If I go here, you'll see something like this. Beautiful. It's obviously not a very reader friendly at this point, so I'm going to try and make that a little reader friendly, readable. And I'm going to use this tool called JSON-lint. It's a bit of a JSON validator essentially. And if I just dump all of that in here and validate this, it makes it a little bit more readable. Again, not a mandatory step per se, but it obviously, because we're going to be making updates or changes to this, it's valuable for you to make this additional step in the process. We copy this up and select your preferred text editor. For me, that is Sublime Text. You can quite easily use anything of your choice. Could be Visual Studios if you want. And I'm going to copy this in here. I'm not sure if I copied it all correctly. So let me just go back again. I think it's copied everything. Okay, not what I want. Let's do this. There you go. Right. So from here, I'm just going to switch this on to JSON so that it just gives a little bit of color to this. Right. So from here on in, again, don't be too scared looking at this. There are, again, just 4 steps that we want to do here. Step number 1 is required because, as you can imagine, this documentation was available on Pet Store's own website. So all the base paths and hosts and everything is associated with that. Whereas when we are making it available through our portal, we are essentially showcasing it through Tyk and its gateway. So there are a couple of updates that need to be done. First of which is right here on top, which is under the host section. So right now where it says petstore.swagger.io, what we want here is our own host to come in. And that is going to be right here on top, our tyk.io. Now, this may vary depending on how you've created your account. So it's very highly unlikely it's going to be the same as mine. So yeah, just copy pasting this is probably not going to work. So just make sure that you're using the right one. That is going to be, that's something that's generated on your end. So I'm just going to replace this. I don't think I need the protocol. And the base path is going to be the API endpoint specifically that we had created. So I'm going to use that and replace this with that information. So step 1, step 2 done. Step 1, host name changed. Step 2, base path changed. Okay. Now, if we did not have any versions, this would be it. You can just plug that into your documentation section and you're good to go. However, because we have versions, there are 2 additional steps that are going to be needed. So what do we need to do? First is going to be actually enabling or creating a parameter which is an identifier for versioning, to identify a reference to versions. I have a little bit of a code snippet that is available here. And again, don't worry, I'll explain what this is. I'm just going to copy this and we go all the way to the bottom right here. And I'm going to feel like I'm missing, am I missing something? No, I think it's fine. Okay, I'm just going to rearrange that a little bit, indent that a little bit better. So what's happening? I am now defining a parameter called API version, which is essentially handling the versions for this particular endpoint. And it's going to be in the header that is going to specify XAPI version, just like what we have been doing. And it's going to take a type of string to essentially enable that. So this is essentially defining the API version as a parameter and making it available. Step number 2 here is going to be associating this with our endpoint that we have been working with, which is our pet /pet ID endpoint. So I'm going to try and find that. So let's see, pet / and there you go. So in here, you would see you've got your get, you've got your post, you've got your delete. I don't need any of these. I'm going to set this up on its own. And I'm just going to do this. That doesn't look great, but let me just fix that. There you go. So what I'm really doing here is I'm making a reference to that API version that I had defined at the bottom. That's it. That's really it. And making it available for an interactive experience on the documentation. So I'm going to do this, go back and copy this, heading on to our dashboard, back to our catalog. Under documentation, I'm now going to use this here. Attaching documentation and updating it. Great. No errors there. And now you'll see a new button that's available here, which is documentation. So I'm going to click on this and you have documentation. Now remember that we are using an authentication token here. So if you want to just view it, that is all okay. But if you want to have an interactive experience in this case, then you would need your authentication token, which I'm just going to make use of from here. Now it's authorized. So if you want to send in requests from just the documentation to a gateway, you will be able to do so now. We're going to look at pet get pet ID right here. And let's see if we can try that out. We're going to be doing version 2 and execute. And we have Lavin Mufalda here with us. So that's all good. That's how our documentation, that's how our cataloging is going to work. And that's about it. Those are the 5 steps that we were looking after, and we have finished exactly on time at 30 minutes. Anything additional here is basically if you want to look at, say, analytics, for instance, you'll be able to see more information around that, how the calls have been made. If there have been errors, you can look at it from the analytics perspective and drill down if you need to. But that is where our basic 5 steps of the journey ends. We have created something. We've created and we have mounted the API endpoint. We have secured it. We have rate limited it. We have versioned it. And now it's available for people to actually use and test and try and create things using the API that you've made available. So yeah, so with that, I'm going to stop the demo. I do have a bonus sort of content, but I'm going to focus on questions if there are any. I'm going to stop sharing. Okay, right. So I hope that was useful. If there are any questions, please do send them here. I'm happy to answer anything related to API management or Tyk at all. Happy to do that. Right. Okay. One question is around the portal itself, how customizable it is. So, right, if I go back to quickly sharing. So the portal itself is completely customizable. Well, it's a light version, as I say, a light version of a content management system. So it gives you the ability to actually create pages, create menus, have your own styles. So from a more visual perspective, you can customize the different versions, different aspects of this developer portal to your liking. You can have a landing page that talks about a little bit more about what the product is, what you're really exposing here, and what really the purpose of all of this is. But beyond just the aesthetics of it, beyond just the portal itself, even the interactions that you can have from the point of view of the email responses that go in, when a person has requested, whether that is creating a developer account, whether that is asking or requesting for a key, the kind of information that you can send in, that's all customizable as well. And from a settings perspective, you can do that. I think I'd spoken about key approval, so you can enable that, and that will send in a request for approval as opposed to directly making the key available straight off. You can have different email customization, and we take in HTML, custom HTML templates here. So if you're looking to brand it in a specific way, add in more information in a visual manner, you can very easily do that as well. So I wouldn't say it is hugely customizable, but it does quite a lot from a customization perspective. Okay. Okay, I do have a question around quota limits, different approach available. Right, okay. So that actually is quite an interesting one because there was a bit of a bonus content that I sort of wanted to try out. So now what I demonstrated before was with this, sorry, policies. So I think I'm just going to go here because we are doing it from this stage. So there are a couple of things here where we talk about quotas. So quotas is obviously the number of requests that you can have over a period of time, which is not really the same as rate limiting. The other interesting part here is also around throttling, which over here is. So the interesting aspect here is while we are looking at rate limiting, we are looking at the number of the requests essentially cutting off after, say, 5 requests being made within 20 seconds. What you could do is, what throttling essentially enables in this case, is that instead of cutting you off completely, it essentially keeps trying a couple more times to see if there is a response that can be received. So what that works is, the way it works is if you set this, say, setting a retry limit here to 3 and your throttle interval, it's going to be about 10 seconds. And if I were to set that up, and go back to my Postman, if I, right now, if I want to make some requests, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there you go. Let me just go back to my default. Okay, see if that's taken effect now. There you go. So instead of actually failing, it's going to give me a bit of a try. It's essentially what throttling is all about. It's going to give a little bit of an attempt and see if there is a response that comes in over a period of time. So essentially, if you're not bombarding the servers with more and more requests, eventually what should happen, if it is within the bracket of time, then you will get a response as opposed to hitting the rate limit. So that's quite an interesting feature that we've got now enabled on with throttling as well. On Tyk. Going back to this, with quotas, again, got potentially unlimited requests, but you can also have the number of requests set here over a period of time. And yeah, that's primarily what you're doing over a period of time. You can have X number of requests that you can set, and it will only allow those requests to go through. I'm hoping, did that answer your question? I'm going to stop sharing once again. Did that answer your question, Rahul? Is there anything specifically that you are looking for? Then please feel free to ask as well. Okay, right, let me see if we have anything special. In Portal, you're able to delegate, update, and create action. Context, we want to host reference data, but limit access to certain people. We also want only certain people to edit, update, and update the content, like API owners. Yeah, okay, so the question here is, in Portal, would you be able to delegate, update, and create, have a create action? So to me, that sort of sounds a little bit like access control to a certain extent. And hopefully with this, so what you could do here is, if I go back again to sharing, we have something called user groups. And what that enables is you can essentially have permissions set for a different set of people to access different parts of your, whether that's your dashboard or whether that is any other parts of your API management. If you're looking specifically from a portal perspective, sorry, I'm just going to see if I'm getting the right question. Yeah. Okay. So from a portal perspective as well, it follows similar rules. If you're looking at something specifically targeted for that, for your portal to have special access, I think you can do that. I'm just going to ask for a little bit of a confirmation on this because we do have our in-house expert, which is Raj. Raj, if you're okay to join in, I'm just going to add you into this conversation just so that I get this information correctly for Charles. Okay. Hey, Raj.
Yeah. Hi, Buddha.
Hey. Hi. Okay. So I'm gonna relay the question that's come in from Charles. So he's asking, in Portal, would you be able to delegate, update, and have a create action? Context is we want to host reference data, but limit access to certain people. We also want only certain people to edit/update the content, i.e. API owners. So it sort of sounds like having access control over Portal, over the dev portal.
Okay, I have got the question maybe like 50–60% only, but let me try to put it away and let's see whether I answer it properly to the expectation of Charles here. Okay, first thing is, what are as an API owner, right? When you want to publish an API, There are chances like you want certain APIs to be available to everybody, and certain APIs you want to restrict of people from seeing it. Only like people who have logged in can see it, kind of a thing. Right? So that
Yeah.
is possible. I mean, in the portal, if you go, there is an option wherein you can select whether you want the catalogs to be available for everyone or only for the people who have logged in.
Right.
So you're restricting it at the first level. Now the second level is, let's say, for example, uh, who can log into the dashboard itself, who can actually publish these APIs. As an API owner, in your team, let's say, for example, you have a structure there and you want only few people to have the responsibility or access to publish an API rather than everybody. So to do that, at the dashboard level, there is a user group, which you have already explained to them. So you can create a certain group and you can map users to that. So whenever someone logs in, based on the access controls that they have been given, they can go and publish an API or they just cannot. They can just read whatever is there. So there are two levels here. One is before you publish it, who can actually publish it? And after publishing, who can view it?
Right. Okay. Great. Does that sort of answer your question, Charles? Do you have anything more specific to ask in this case? Okay. Okay, fine. If you have anything, please do feel free. Rahul, I saw you've mentioned that none as of now. Yeah, sure. Feel free to send us an email if you've got any specific use case in mind, and we might be able to help you out in a more specific manner for your particular use case. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Great, Charles. Great. So reach out to us. We'll talk through what you require specifically. The other thing to also note about the portal as well, and I think there's been a use case around this as well, where while you can do a lot of customization from the dashboard, from our from what you see visually as well, but everything that you see here, everything that you see with Tyk is also made available through APIs, which means that if you actually had a system which is built on your own, which is using some other content management system, that can still be powered by our APIs to essentially furnish the required rules, furnish the required data that is going to power said developer portal. So we do have a use case of that as well, which is quite successful. So you have both those options. If you want to go completely custom, yet being powered by Tyk, you can do that. If you want to make use of the customization features available with Tyk as well, you can do that. So both those options are available to you. Okay. Any other questions that you would like to ask? We also have Padmaraj. So Raj, I haven't introduced who Raj is. Raj is our solution architect here based in APAC. He's leading the team of pre-sales consulting engineering in the region. So any specific technical questions that you may have, he is the go-to person to ask as well. So any questions that you have for us, just feel free to send it our way. If not, I think we've done pretty decent with our time. I think we are coming up to just about 50 minutes at this point. And once again, Rahul, Charles, thank you for your questions. Do send us an email. My email is boda@tyk.io. You probably already have that. I'm just going to put that in here. And send me any use case that you have in mind, and we'll really talk through what your specific case and what is required. So definitely feel free to reach out to us. Right, with that, we come to an end of this section, of this session today. As you know, with this session, as a follow-up, we'll be sending you the recording of this session as well. The idea is for you to get started with Tyk as quickly as possible. So do feel free to visit our Get Started page and get up and running. If you have, again, any questions with that, let us know. If you're using a local installation or an on-premise version, then my friend and colleague, Matt, has done a really good video going through step-by-step how that essentially works, how that looks. And it's really, really informative. It's already available on YouTube, but I'll be happy to send this your way if that is what you're looking for. Additionally, we've had our 3.0 update as well, where we've done a whole new refresh, added a whole lot of features into it, one of which really is the universal data graph, where we are looking at how multiple data sources can be brought together to create a seamless experience. And that data source also includes the use of GraphQL, which we have also introduced with our Tyk 3.0 update, where you're not only securing and managing your GraphQL endpoints, existing GraphQL endpoints, but also have the ability to stitch together different data sources, whether that's GraphQL or REST based, and creating a seamless experience for your users. So all that is available. We have a lot more webinars coming your way, so do stay tuned. Any other questions, please do feel free to send them our way after the session. With that, I say thank you very much for joining me in this session today. Thank you, Raj, for coming in and answering that question. And yeah, I hope you all have a great evening or day, depending on where you're joining us from. And yeah, that's about it. Hope you have a great API journey ahead. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.